I'll always remember this as the Nicholas Taleb trade. Someone pressed him, I think, in the depths of the COVID crisis or something like that, or near there. What's your bet? Like, what's your portfolio like now?
Mm.
And he said interest rates were at 0%, and he goes, "Oh, I'm betting on inflation." Because I have bets on inflation because it's low cost, and if inflation hasn't been around for a while, so when it does come back, it should come back with a vengeance. And it was a throwaway comment in a video in an interview that he did, and I
Yeah.
remember sitting there going, "You're betting it's 0%
Interest.
interest rates." We were worried about negative interest rates, right? They had
Right.
negative interest rates in Europe. You're worried about inflation,
Yeah.
and then like 2 years later, 3 years later, inflation
He
is
was
like
right.
through the. So I'm like, okay, so like I keep thinking, like you just said, you just never know what can come out of the blue.
Yeah.
And then the other side of that is so then really the answer to that is don't overthink.
Okay.
It's the smooth brain response, because if in a dynamic system you cannot account for all the different variables, then don't sit there going, well, that person knows that, I know that, they know that, I know that, they know that, I know. Just make whatever decision that you think is okay in the moment, without trying to predict what the weather will be like in 3 years. You just deal with whatever's going on now. And when I think that, I go, then I want to buy Bitcoin. Then I want to buy crypto.
So, okay, this is an interesting conversation because Nassim Taleb and Mark Spitznagel are, sort of. I'm not sure what the relationship is like. I think Taleb is an advisor to Universa, but they've made an entire career out of betting on improbable events and betting on uncertainty, right? So, like, there's a comment that you made there with Taleb's point, his offhanded comment about betting on interest, is that it was low cost. And that's been their big thesis, even at Universa as well, is that they're looking for the cheapest approach to getting asymmetrical returns. And they have found, for the most part, they find that in the options market. But other participants, even like Bill Ackman, if you look at his track record during COVID, he had bet heavy on credit default swaps in the insurance realm, which is another asymmetrical trade in which the cost is fixed, but then the upside would be enormous if the event actually took place. And he got into that trade perfectly. So I think what's unsurprising to me is that Taleb is mainly focused on those types of asymmetric plays. Instead of trading direction, instead of trading, gamma or some, complex aspect of the options market, and trying to construct like the perfect options contract that will have huge payoff. Instead, they're looking for untimely events because no one's paying attention to them. And
Mhm.
that's another facet of investing in general that I find amazing. It's like spotting the underpriced or undervalued small cap stocks that no one sees coming, but you have an informational edge, and you know that this company is going to skyrocket because they have a history of doing X, Y, or Z, whatever it is, right? So I think it's fascinating. I'm not an expert in the world of uncertainty like Taleb is, or Spitznagel for that matter. But I do think that there's some obvious merit to this idea of looking where people aren't looking.
Right. So have you heard this idea that crypto is a long dated an option that never expires? Because you get this asymmetrical upside, it never expires, and so even if it goes to $1, you still have your ticket, because you never know what might happen. And so that to me is the smooth brain response to this uncertainty.
I would have held that viewpoint if it didn't follow the maxim in moments of panic, everything correlates to one. And in 2020, when I was sitting at my desk at IHS Market and we were tripping breakers with the major exchanges because sell-offs were occurring at like rapid paces, and crypto sold off at the same time and also had a meaningful drawdown during that period, it converged to a correlation of one with the rest of the markets. So unfortunately, it didn't behave like an insurance contract should. It didn't behave like a long out of the money put would have behaved if that were the bet you placed instead.
Well, it's a not a put, a call. And so when it falls, that like that's the time to buy it even more. Then
Sure,
you get
sure.
to, so you're
Yeah.
it's always this call market on essentially liquidity. and the periods of volatility are times where you can get that call option at a discount. And so, to me, it's not a hedge against, or it's a. I'm betting that the system does not want to collapse quietly, that it will rail against it by pumping everything that it can. It's going to take out every credit card. It's going to do whatever. And that bet, I go, well, the only way I could really bet on that is, or I feel certain I could bet on that, is through crypto. Now, the downside risk is that crypto gets banned or whatever. They're able to crack prime numbers and cryptography goes out the window and it all goes to zero. Fine, but that's not any worse than what I normally do in the markets when I'm not paying attention. Like, that's not any worse than that. And so
I,
I was talking about all in. To me, it's no risk at all.
Fair enough. I guess the the struggle I have with that viewpoint is that you still have to sit through the drawdown risk. So, while on one hand, if I were to buy a put contract to protect against drawdowns, I have fixed risk there. It's just the cost of the premiums of that contract, and I can let it expire worthless. On the other hand, if I treat Bitcoin like it's a contract, but I'm holding through the drawdowns, I might experience a 75% drawdown before I get to enjoy that 300 or 400% upside or more.
That's right.
So I guess I still treat it like it's a risk asset because it is. It still contains and inherently has the type of risk that would be found in other markets, particularly like it starts to feel like a leveraged market, even though it's not leveraged.
Right. Well, that is the downside. I will admit. I will admit. Oh, look at that. And Bitcoin's falling. Great. Thank you very much, Bitcoin, for proving Mike's point here.
Oof.
All right.
Yep.
So I'll leave it at that because I'm going to go buy some more Bitcoin.
Get that call option going.
That's right.